Okay. Good question again. You're good. Man.
Really good.
Thank you.
We're in the third day of a tour with 30 interviews.
I'm on the very
So there aren't a lot of
end.
new questions, but you're doing an awesome job.
I mean, we've been on a lot of media.
It's made it more interesting for us.
This is fun.
Hi, I'm Kelsey Humphreys, and this is The Pursuit, where I help you in your journey, your hustle, and your climb to be your best self and put out your best work. After all, I'm still hustling for that too, guys. So I sit down and interview today's most successful celebrities, executives, and entrepreneurs, and I break down success for the rest of us. Let's dive into this episode with Tony Robbins and Joe Berlinger. Tony Robbins is a life strategist who helps people achieve personal and professional breakthroughs. He has reached millions through his wildly popular motivational seminars, his coaching to CEOs, U.S. presidents, and billionaire hedge fund managers, and his 5 internationally acclaimed books. Joe Berlinger is an Academy Award-nominated filmmaker whose films include the landmark documentaries Brother's Keeper, Paradise Lost, and Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, a film that redefined the rockumentary genre. In addition to his documentary work, he is a 2-time Emmy and Peabody winner that has created many hours of television as both a producer and a director. The two came together for this unique interview to discuss their new documentary and creativity, vulnerability, risk, and reward. How can entrepreneurs and artists face repeated failure, criticism, and rejection and still find both achievement and fulfillment? Let's listen in to find out. I am so excited to be here with Tony Robbins again and Joe Berlinger. They are here. I got to sneak into their press tour for the new documentary, I Am Not Your Guru. So thank you guys both for fitting me in. Yes, so exciting. All right, well, I want to talk about a lot of things. This film, you guys, I mean, you have to watch it. You have to go watch it. Joe, incredible job. And then Tony, like, I can't even, because the film takes you through a 6-day event. And it is just
in 2
incredible.
hours, so don't worry.
Yeah. But
the
it
magic
really,
of this filmmaker.
The original cut was 6 weeks, so I decided to cut it down.
but it really takes you through the journey. I thought that was really incredible. I felt like I went through each day. It was really great, and it really gave me some insight into how your amazing seminars work. But first, let's back up to how this started. You guys are at a party, I guess, or a social event?
We met socially, and I had only the most basic knowledge. I mean, obviously, most people in our culture have some knowledge of who Tony Robbins is, but I had no kind of deep understanding of what he was about. And we met. He happened to be a fan of my Metallica film, Metallica, Some Kind of Monster, which is ultimately about group therapy and dissolving relationships and getting to the next level. And, the band was in crisis, and they hired a therapist, and
it was brilliant.
Yeah, he loved that movie, so we just started talking about it. And of course, anyone who loves my movies, I'll of course talk about it.
Right.
But in the conversation, I think Tony gleaned, because he's obviously very perceptive, that I had some issues in my life at the time. We didn't overtly talk about it, but he later told me he kind of gleaned that I would get a lot out of going to one of his seminars. And back then I would have told you, A, I'm not a seminar guy, B, I'm not a self-help guy, although he hates that word self-help, but whatever, got to use that word just so people know what we're talking about. But for some reason, because he's so charismatic, and there was just something about our conversation, I just felt pulled towards him. So he invited me very kindly to this to Date with Destiny, and I bit of a workaholic, so I don't even take a 6-day vacation most of the time. So for me to take 6 days out of my life to, go take a seminar, which is something I had never done, I was surprised. And obviously it was my attraction towards what Tony was about. Just in that conversation, just made me head out to California, because at the time it was in California. Now it's in Boca Raton, Florida. But, for a New Yorker, go to California, take 6 days out, go to the seminar. It was, at every step I was like, why am I doing this? But something was pulling me. But then I had a moment of crisis. The first 2 hours of it afterwards, I was just like, I like flipping out, like this is not for me, for whatever reason. It was obviously touching a nerve. I fled for the exit doors on the first break, which was after about 2 hours. I called my wife back in New York, and I said, Lauren, I've got to get the hell out of here. Tony's invited me. He's an amazingly nice guy. This seems like an amazing thing, but it doesn't feel like it's for me. I don't want to insult the guy. Like, what's your advice? And she said, listen, why don't you just stay one more day before you make such a rash decision? You've carved out the 6 days. So I did, and thank God for that advice, because on day 2 there was this amazing experience that I had that totally turned me around. It was the nucleus that started my whole journey, basically, with Tony, which was he took us through this guided memory process where he challenges you to go back to your earliest memory, and then challenges you to dig up something about that memory you have long repressed, because the memory before that memory is the one that will liberate you from what's holding you back. In a nutshell, did I say that right?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So I did it, and it's in a room full of 2,500 people, and I kind of dove into it, and I said, look, some of these things he makes us do, or we're encouraged to do.
He felt like it was being made to do.
Some of the things we're encouraged to do don't put you in your comfort zone, nor should you be. So I just kind of pushed all that resistance aside, dove in, and I had the most amazing, remainder of the 6-day experience, to the point where I just, he gave me some amazing tools, and I wanted to share that. So I called him up at the end of the seminar, thanked him profusely. I said, look, I would love to make a movie about this. And of course, I thought he was going to say, yeah, let's do it. When can you get here? And he was very reluctant at first. So it took me 2 years I'm going to call you every couple of months or whatever. And that also developed a nice friendship as we got to know each other. But he was a little reluctant, and I
was reluctant, just so you know, because 2 things. One was, I believe Joe is brilliant. I knew I was a fan of his documentaries. I mean, he's gotten people who are, on death row, who are innocent, out of death row. I mean, he's done some amazing work. But the idea of bringing these cameras in, I have cameras in my event, but they're long lenses. It's only for magnification, so you can see people's faces. So, with 2,000 people, you can see what's going on. But, having a camera right here while you're going through a life change, a breakthrough, a challenge, I thought it's going to be too disruptive. And the other part was I just couldn't imagine how you're going to take 6 days, 12, 14-hour days, and reduce it to less than 2 hours and still have integrity and still have the spirit and the soul of film. But that's why he's got all his Emmys and Academy Award nominations and so forth. He's just a genius in that area. But what he did brilliantly is he said, look, we trust each other, respect each other. How about this? How about I come in and I will film, and if at any moment you believe it really is hurting or interfering with the seminar, we'll shut it down, the project's over. He said, if not, then at the end of this, I take it and run with it and go. And he came in, and he and his team are brilliant. And you can imagine working those kind of hours with camera crews. And they were just so in the zone that the cameras went away, and they caught the magic of this. And then it comes down to, I asked him, I said, one more thing. I said, I thought I was getting a really good deal here. I said, I want you to understand I am not willing to do this unless you wait a year afterwards, because I want you to interview people and show people that the changes really lasted. Because, most people in our society, not entrepreneurs are on the cutting edge, right? Entrepreneurs are always looking for an answer. But the average person thinks that change takes forever and it's hard, and that if it's fast, it's not going to last. And most of the time, they're right. But when you go and rewire your beliefs and your values, things that control your thoughts and feelings and emotions and your nervous system for 6 days and nights, and the way we do it, the change lasts, right? So I knew that. He wasn't sure for sure, but what he also didn't tell me was going to take a year to make this damn thing.
Yeah, it was an easy promise to wait a year, because that's how, it took over a year to make this.
Right. But what was beautiful is seeing these people a year later and seeing how much their life had changed. And we've seen them again since then.
Yeah.
Come to some of the openings here, and they're just transformed human beings. So I can't thank him enough. He did something I thought was impossible. So it wasn't I wasn't interested. It was just I want to protect the experience for the people. And I wanted, if we're going to do something, I didn't know how to make certain that happened. And he opened that door.
Now, what's interesting, Tony, how did you know when you guys talked at that party? Could you just sense that he maybe could benefit from your event?
Yeah, I know people pretty well. And Joe was, I think, near 50 at that time, right? When you had about 50th birthday.
Just turning 50.
And I don't know, I think Brian or somebody mentioned that to me. Yeah. And I was talking to him, and I just felt his presence. I felt his integrity. I felt all these things that made me like him even more. Like, sometimes you meet somebody's art, and their art's great. You meet the person, they're not always a nice human. He's just a dedicated human being. And I felt a bond with him because I think we both are seekers of truth. That's, I kid, we're so identical here in our size and our scope and our background. But what our bond is based on is he is a seeker of truth. I'm a seeker of truth. And we're not just seekers of truth. We want to bring that truth to the public so it makes their life better, so it changes society. And so I felt that bond, but I also felt his, what I would call suffering, his internal conflicts, his He's achieved so much, but I didn't feel the level of fulfillment, the level of freedom or joy or happiness that I felt he deserved.
So can you tell us, you kind of told us a little bit about the moment that you had at the seminar, but can you tell us now, you're a couple years out, how did it change your life?
Tony just has this gift of, I mean, he certainly has his own philosophies. So when I say this, I don't mean to trivialize it, but Tony's gift, I think, is both as a master strategist and somebody who can assimilate ideas you've heard before, but not done in a way that makes them so accessible. So he has lots of his own ideas, obviously, in terms of strategy, and he has this amazing ability to synthesize, different philosophical gems, but present them to you and put it all together in a way it just makes sense, And so, I don't know, some of these things you've heard before in other ways, but the way it's presented to you in this program, it just makes you feel like you have the tools to deal with your shit, if I can say. Am I allowed to say that? So I just, look, it doesn't mean that I haven't stumbled a dozen times or more since leaving the seminar, but it doesn't, I don't wallow in it for weeks and months. He's given me the ability to snap back and understand, and if I had to boil it down, I mean, this is oversimplifying what he has given me and what the course does, but if I had to boil it down to one thing, it's a sense of gratitude and appreciation. And that sounds so basic, but it was eye-opening for me to appreciate my life, to appreciate the fact that I've been married to the same woman for 25 years who's wonderful, and I have 2 wonderful kids, and Jesus, I get to make films for a living, and how lucky am I compared to so much suffering in the world? And I never really appreciate. I mean, that was my thing. Other people have different things, but that was my thing, was just never really getting a sense of appreciation.
To be fair, I think he appreciated it, but he didn't get the benefit of that appreciation, meaning it wasn't it wasn't where you fully appreciate. You appreciate it, but when you don't fully appreciate, you cheat yourself. And that sounds so overly simplistic, I agree, that it's a different life when life's a gift every moment, or when it's not, you're able to find the gift, right? Because our minds, I always tell people, this brain that we all have is 2 million years old. It's not designed to make you happy. It's designed to make you survive. And to survive, you have to look for what could go wrong. So the mind is always looking for what's wrong. What's wrong is always available. There's always something to be upset about.
Right.
But so is what's right. And I'm not talking about positive thinking bullshit. I'm talking about literally rewiring your nervous system so that you live in a place where the gratitude and the joy and the sense of grace and the sense of awe and all those things that make us as humans feel fully alive are in your life on a daily basis. And if they're not, you know what to do to bring it back, as opposed to hoping things go well or being pissed off when they don't or feeling overwhelmed or stressed. And it all comes down because no one teaches us this. And if you hear it, it sounds like, a bunch of bullshit. Let me achieve, I'll figure out how to be fulfilled. That billionaires are much more common than people that are totally alive every day, feeling the beauty of their life and being associated to it day in and day out, even when it's not going your way, even when your company isn't generating yet the revenue, your profits that you want, even when somebody, rains on your parade. If you can find joy, pleasure, appreciation in those moments, now you have a magnificent life and nothing's going to stop you. You'll achieve more too because you have so much energy, because you're not sucked in with all the inner conflicts that pull the energy out of you. Now you don't have the energy for your kids or your husband or your wife or your business at the same level. People say, how do you have so much energy? Because I'm not divided within myself. I'm aligned. I know what I'm after. I know who I am. I know what I want to create. I know what and I'm enjoying every damn moment of it. And I've gotten better in the last year and a half. Go easy for you to enjoy it. Money doesn't guarantee joy, no matter how much you have. People loving you doesn't guarantee you feel loved. Having a beautiful family doesn't do it. Having a beautiful job doesn't do it. And most people, in the beginning, they appreciate things. But there's this law called the law of familiarity. If you're around anything enough, you tend to take it just a little bit for granted. You don't mean to. It's just human nature. Unless you learn how to counteract that, the person you once were dreaming, could you go out with? Would they date you? Would they kiss you? Ooh, would they make love to you? And it was like, oh, you dreamed about, wondered about. Now you've been married 10 years. Love you too. It's like what happened? Right? What happened? This was used to be the light of my life, and it's just the law of familiarity creeping in. So I want to kill that, and I want to bring back the beautiful states of love, joy, awe, excitement that make a life fully alive. And all the success in the world won't do it. How many people you know that are achievers, entrepreneurs, business owners, they're my brethren, right? And these are people who've had the courage and the guts to say, I will not settle for less than I can do or be or share or create. I'm going to do this on my terms. I'm going to build this company. I'm going to face my fears. I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to learn. That's an entrepreneur, right? Those are rare people, and what's more rare than that is the entrepreneur that's happy.
Awesome. And go watch my other interview with Tony. He talks more about rewiring your mind for success and gratitude, some great things in there. I want to talk to you both because I think you'll have an interesting take on this. You both touched on, maybe you were a little bit cynical or critical and not sure, which before joining the entertainment industry, I was in advertising, and it's just a bunch of cynics. I mean, let's be real, okay? And especially really creative, brilliant people just tend to be kind of crusty and cynical. Why do you think that is?
Good question. I mean, I don't think it's limited to creative people. I just
Well,
think
that's
I
true.
think we live in very divisive, cynical, unfulfilled times. Despite when you think about all of that, my iPhone, I was going to pull it out. I mean, the fact that I can do all that on a telephone, like 10 years ago, was impossible. 400 years ago, even, the fact that we live in this world and have all of these opportunities, and yet people, I feel, are more disconnected than ever before, more unfulfilled than ever before. I can't tell you why, but I think we have a general Western society malaise of dissatisfaction, and that's what produces cynicism. And it goes right to the heart of what we've been talking about. I think if people, and why I made the film, if people felt, and maybe this sounds very Pollyannish, but I really believe there'd be less problems in the world if people felt more fulfilled, more connected to themselves and their purpose in life, and more connected to one another. As Tony says, the guys who are strapping bombs around themselves, blowing people up, or the Dallas shooter, those are not happy, fulfilled people. And that's why you have cynicism and problems and hate. I mean, even frankly, this film, we've had such a disconnect between the audience reaction. This is my 12th or 13th feature-length film. I've had a wide variety of screenings and subject matters. I've had success. Most of my films have not been duds, but this is the film that I've had the most passionate reaction to. We've had people at the end of screenings in tears. We had a woman the other day who was a cancer survivor who actually said, who's this Tony? I don't know why I came. But she stood up in tears saying, that was my going into the film attitude. By the end of the film, she was so thankful, so grateful that she had this epiphany during the film. And that's exactly the response I wanted to evoke. So we're having this a major disconnect between, we've gotten a couple of snarky reviews by angry critics who just don't want to be told that you can make a positive film. And you can, the purpose of the film is not to tear down and criticize, but rather to uplift and motivate. And it's just, it bothers me a little bit, but for the most part, and this is, Tony has helped me with this, but I'm choosing to focus on these amazing reactions that we've had. I mean, we've had standing ovations, packed houses, people totally digging the film, and then you pick up today's New York Times, and it's like, what movie are you talking about? Why don't you come to the screening and see how people are reacting instead of you snarkily telling me, falsely portraying my motivations or falsely portraying his. I just think there's a lot of anger around, and then I don't know how to break through it.
I can tell you where it comes from because this is my life's work. So where it comes from is we all, not all, but most of us, we start out life wide open. We think everything is possible. We believe. And we go after it very often. Not everybody, some people are too fearful to go after it. But when you are disappointed because you try something and it doesn't work again and again, which is what most of life is. Most of the people most entrepreneurs overestimate what they can do in a year, and then they're disappointed. But they underestimate what they do in a decade or 2 or 3. And 10 years, most of us know as you get a little older, it goes by real fast. 10 years from now, you're going to arrive. The question's where. And if you don't do something today, you're going to show up somewhere. So what happens is when you go through the natural disappointments and frustrations, when things don't work out the way you expected, when people betray you or disappoint you or hurt you, what happens is all cynicism is, all skepticism is a protective device that says, I don't want to get my hopes up because I don't want to feel that drop of disappointment. I don't want to feel the loss. I don't want to feel the hurt. So when people tell me I'm cynical, I'm pessimistic, I look at them and say, listen, let's be honest. You're gutless. It takes no guts to be a cynic. It takes no guts to tear something up. This guy works for a year with God only knows how many staff members puts their soul into a film. People all over the country and around the world, other parts of the world, are going to this thing already, and these premieres are going, this is incredible. And someone who's never made a film, never took a risk, never built anything, writes something like they're an authority, and some people won't get to go see that. But they do it because it's foreign to them. Because if I believe this is possible, then I have to look at my own life. I mean, you saw the film, you've seen these lives change, and you see them a year later, so you know it worked. And it looks like miracles to people. So people's assumption, it's not a miracle, they must have edited this differently, or they must have picked only the best example. People, all that is fear talking. It doesn't take any courage to think things don't work and they're wrong and they're terrible and never fixed, because you'll never be disappointed because you'll never take any action, so it won't change and it's self-fulfilling. But it takes guts to say, I'm gonna believe in something and try it, even though I might fail the first, fourth, 10th time, I'm gonna keep going. Most people don't have that kind of courage. Most people don't have that kind of self-honesty. Great entrepreneurs do. It's what makes them different. It's why I say they're my brethren, because they're hungry, driven human beings that understand life is not about me. Life is about me adding value to other people. The more people I add value to, the more I do more for others than anybody else, the more I have the chance to prosper if I manage my business effectively, if I manage the economics of it as well. I have an opportunity to have life on my terms, and I have an opportunity to contribute in a significant way to other people. So all it is hurt and pain stacked, and then not wanting it and putting the defense mechanism up. That's what happens in relationships. People become cynical about relationships because they've had so many disappointments, because they don't want to look in and go, what part of me created this? It must be my ex, it must be this, it must be society, it must be my mother, it must be my background. Bullshit. It's all us. You can make yourself miserable with this mind, or you can make yourself euphoric with this mind, but most of us have never learned how to take charge of this. We let the mind run us. And what I believe is the heart and soul and spirit of a person is larger than the mind. The mind is good for strategy, figuring stuff out. The mind is worthless for fulfillment. Your mind will not even let you enjoy an apple. It'll go, is it organic? Where did it come from? Has it been sprayed? Your mind is always looking for those things. Your soul is ready, if you let it, to find beauty in everything.
I want to talk a little bit about pressure, because there's got to be pressure for you when you're working on a film to get to the truth and then portray it properly. And then there's the pressure that comes with, releasing it out into the world. How do you deal with that kind of pressure?
Good question.
Great question. Wow. I've never been asked that question in all of my years. And you're right. I don't have a script. I don't know where I'm going. I basically have to jump out a window and hope there's a mattress on the other side to catch me. So this kind of film is a huge act of faith to find the story. And I always tell young filmmakers who, even, when you're doing an interview, I never, and you're not, so that's good, you're doing a good job. I never, a lot of young documentary makers or journalists or whatever who are doing on-camera interviews will have their list of questions, and they'll make sure to go through their list of questions. And I've sat on the side as some of them are doing it, and the person is talking about something amazing, but they're sticking with their questions and they're missing where the story is going. So the most important thing to me is listening and allowing the story to go where it's taking you. I never use a list of questions because, I want to know what that person has to say. Just like every filming situation, I want to know where the story's going and discover it. Paradise Lost is a great example, the Paradise Lost trilogy about the West Memphis Three. I mean, HBO hired us to go down and make a film about 3 satanic, devil-worshipping kids who had done this horrible murder of 3 8-year-olds, because that's what the press was saying, everybody in the press, that's what the town was saying, that's what, the top, the chief investigator of the town said in the media all the time, on a scale of 1 to 10, this is an 11, rock solid evidence. And, and so I thought for months we were making a film about guilty teenagers. I did my first set of interviews with the West Memphis Three, with Bruce Sinofsky, of course, who passed away, and we just got the feeling that something's not right here, and we followed our instincts. And had we locked into what we were assigned to do by HBO, had we had our blinders on with we've got to do this, we would have missed the story, which is what I ended up spending the next 20 years doing, proving their innocence and helping to get them out of prison. So how I deal with the pressure is that I just believe that you have to have faith. You have to have this act of faith. I jump out the window, I know I'm going to get the story. So I actually find the filming process, incredibly pleasurable, and I don't allow the pressure to get to me because I feel like I have a mission to uncover the truth.
And Tony, talk about pressure. your people are asking you, or you are there, in front of thousands of people, problem solving for them on the spot. I mean, you guys will see in the film, it's incredible. How do you deal with the pressure?
I don't perceive it as pressure because when you feel, I don't know if this is the same for Joe, but I think when you are certain, when you have a mission that's larger than yourself, and people always ask me, like, how do you get up there without notes and speak for all this time? Or how do you be a great speaker? I say, well, I do this because I've done it a few million times. Like most people are rewarded in public for what they've done in private for decades. Like that film was decades, it was a series of films, right? I mean, the level that goes into that, people don't have a clue and they just think it should be easier, what the case may be. But also, it's not pressure when you have certainty that you can do something that's valuable and when you believe what you're doing is so important. And it's not pressure for me because I believe that people have a limited number of ways to handle all the problems. And I have unlimited ways to help them change. And in most therapists, and I coach a lot of therapists, most therapists, they have a certain rigid set of rules they've learned, right? And there's only so many ways. And most people have a problem, have unlimited ways to be screwed up. And the therapist only has so many ways to change them. And so they come for months or weeks or years and still don't get it. I don't have those limits, as you've seen. I will do anything other than not hurt you. I will never hurt a person, but I will do anything. I will tease, I will curse, not at you. I will be playful, I will act, I will laugh, I will be bizarre, I will be weird, I will break your pattern, and I will find the way to get you there. And if what I do doesn't work, I don't get upset about it, I just try something else. That doesn't work, try something else. I keep changing until I find the way. Now, I've done it so many times with so many people that there's only so many patterns that exist. So when someone stands up within me, it's already done. It's like my core belief is if someone stands up, if they're in proximity with me, they are ready or they wouldn't be there. Corny as it may sound, God's put them in my presence. I'm there, they're there for me. We're going to learn from each other and it's going to happen. That's how I operate. And I never see it as pressure. I see it as a privilege. I see it as a gift. I believe this is what I'm made for. And those belief structures add energy, passion, strength, intensity, will, persistence, perseverance, and what's underneath it all is the love for these people and not wanting them to suffer. I grew up in an environment where there's immense suffering, and so I don't want any human to feel that if I can do anything to help it, but more importantly, I want them to have the beauty and the joy of their life well lived. And so this is my 39-year obsession. I don't see it as people that need to be changed. I see it as patterns that need to be changed, shifted, eliminated, broken, and replaced with the truth.
Yeah, that's so great. So you're both things, the answers you just gave had a little bit of risk to them, jumping out and knowing the mattress will be there. And you both took risks with this film because you allowed the camera crew in and you went ahead without a production house behind you.
Well, I had a production house, which is Radical Media, which is my production company.
But that's you. I mean, you took the hit yourself, right?
Yes.
But he didn't know what the story was until he actually can create it, right?
Yeah, I just felt like this was a story that had to be told, and that's I'm pitched a lot of ideas, I develop a lot of ideas, but it's those ideas where you get this feeling I've got to tell the story.
But you're very intuitive and you had a nice insight there. Because when you were talking, I thought of something that I've never thought about before. Also, you asked me like, what is it that makes you driven this way? You asked me a couple different ways, but one of the ways, and it's in the film. I remember I talked to you about part of what makes this really amazing to me is there's no net. Right. That people. It's that I got to go out there and there's all these people from 71 countries and their lives are on the line and they're like, all right, what are we going to do? And it's just me, whatever I can think of creating, some music I can put on, and I got to find a way to deliver it. And I have no idea what someone's going to say or when they're going to say it. And that makes you fully alive, right? It's the guts to put yourself in the environment. And I believe that most human beings, that they put themselves on the line, they would uncover who they really are. But most of us are so afraid of failing or not looking good or losing out, that we just never discover who we are. What I think we have in common is we're willing to step into the uncertainty. All passion is found in the realm of uncertainty. And yet human beings are pulled to certainty because we don't want to deal with our fears. Freedom, liberation is when you break through the fears. All of my brethren out there, all my brothers and sisters watching who are entrepreneurs or considering being entrepreneurs, you are what I'm made for. I mean, I've built 18 companies, 12 I actively manage, 5 billion in sales, as I told you, 1,200 employees. It blows my mind. I have no business background, but I have this passion that says I must do more for others than anybody else, and I'll never stop growing, and I'll never stop changing, and I'll never stop improving, and I feel alive by doing that, as opposed to let me do the same thing every day because I'm good at it, and let me continue to do that, and hopefully my life is really good. That'll make you feel numb if not depressed or frustrated, overwhelmed, which is where most human beings live. So I think that's a common denominator. We both play with no net.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And the interesting thing about being a filmmaker of reality is whether it's a week for a commercial or a 20-year project like Paradise Lost or a 6-day event and then spending a year with Tony, I get to drop into these different worlds each film is like a completely different subject, and you just go in there feeling like you've got to, and there is pressure. Getting back to your other question, because I feel the pressure, but it's exciting. Okay, there is no script. I got to find the story. How do you capture it? And it's just it's very fulfilling to just pursue that.
What's the next pressure that I think for everybody is then, okay, I built this piece of art, and now who's going to love it, who's not? And then we live in a world where most people, if you're hip, you don't get seduced. If you're hip, you don't buy into it. If you're hip, so we have a cultural focus on cynicism, right, to a great extent, and especially in the film business. I mean, honestly, there's so many movies I've not watched because a critic has torn them down. Until one day I asked myself, they've never done anything. How can they possibly tell me this film's good? They've seen a bunch of films. They have their own attitudes and opinions, and the vast majority are lean in the direction of proving they're so sophisticated because they didn't really feel much. I'm going to a movie so I can enjoy myself. I'm going to a movie so I can escape. I'm going to a movie because I want to experience something or maybe learn something historically, or if it's a true life story. And so I look at that and go, damn, the world is full of critics. This character here puts himself on the line, and you're going to have that critics. But what's really rewarding is when your art or your gift, you see the impact of it. And I think that's what's been so beautiful about this film, at least for me, and I know for Joe. And also seeing the kind of people that touch you wouldn't expect. The other day, Joe got an email from Michael Moore. He said, I believe this can save lives. And he told Joe, you thank God you have the courage to make a positive film, because in this industry, when you make one of his only positive films was the one he got thrashed on, right? Which one?
Yeah, his most recent film was an attempt to be positive, and it was his least successful film because people,
the critics thrashed it.
Where to invade next? Like and it's just interesting. He made a positive film. I made a positive film. He responded to mine, and yet the critics have to tear it down.
And not all of them, to be fair. There are plenty of great critics out there too, but there's a percentage of society that does that. But what you got to do is you can focus on the people whose lives have been changed, and that's true I'm just trying to relate this to the business owner, because the business owner is going to work their tail off, and they're going to bring their art, so to speak, to clients or customers, and there's going to be a percentage of them that are not going to love what you do. What you got to focus on is the ones that do and how to serve them more.
With the risk you guys took, did either of you have any regrets or anything you were disappointed about with the way the film turned out?
I have zero.
Absolutely not. I love the film. I was actually telling Tony the other day, there was this great screening at there's this thing called Rooftop Films in New York, where it's an outdoor screening. There was 850 people on this big screen. That was awesome.
I go to a drive-in, that giant thing, but people sitting in normal chairs.
And I saw this, and I said, Tony, you got to come. And so he came, and I just never get tired of watching the film. And I know that sounds like I'm patting myself on the back, but I don't mean it that way. At the point that I am at now with every other film I've made in the past, I can't bear to watch it by now, because I've spent a year in the editing room, the color correct, the mixing, you watch the film over and over and over again, and then you do press screenings, and I can't bear to watch. I'm still we have the film actually is opening tonight in New York City publicly at the IFC Center, and I can't wait to go and watch it again and share it with an audience. It's just an uplifting film. So yeah. What was the point I was making?
No, what you were asking is really what I'm happy with.
Which is
I'll
awesome.
tell you my favorite things of the film, besides the obvious of the impact, it's been getting to know this man. Because and I mean that sincerely, we couldn't be more different people in some ways, but we couldn't be more alike in our hunger and our drives to serve, and that search for truth and our commitment. I mean, this man, he doesn't just work, he puts his soul into what he does, and you can feel that when you see the film. There's so many things in that film that I've seen it so many times, every time I see it a little differently, because I'll be saying something, he punctuates it with, I talked in the film, there's one point when he asked me a very intense and deep question about where this all comes from with me, and I was expressing a stage in my life where someone saw who I was and gave me feedback when I didn't give it to myself. And I was very emotional when I was describing it. He said, why is that so emotional so many years later? I said, because that was a moment of grace. I've done a lot in my life. I've worked my tail off, but then there's grace. And that person looking in my eyes in that moment and telling me what I needed to hear and showing me a pathway was a gift. It wasn't something I did. I get emotionally now when I think about it. But in that moment, the music comes up in a certain way, and he cuts to, you know, the outside of the venue where we are, and the cloud was forming in a certain way in slow motion, and it's just like, it feels like God's there with you, as corny as that may sound. And it just touches my heart, and that's what this guy does. He puts his soul into it, and I think anybody that watches it feels that, other than the haters are gonna hate it. It's nobody just, oh, this is all bull. And you know, like you said, people that are my fans will love, no matter what he did. If he did nothing, they would love this thing. But I'm deeply touched and very grateful to you.
Thank you, man.
In the film, he's working with this woman who had a horrible life, and he coaches her through, you know, and you watch it all unfold. And then you, Tony, have to go backstage. And I'm just looking at you, and I'm like, and anyone who's watching has got to be, you know, how can he do it? And you talk about it being, you know, divine. But when you do go back there, you know, what are you recharging? Are you thinking through what's next? Like, what's going on in your mind after a huge moment like that?
Well, in this case, this young woman is, you know, there's been a lot of horrific things that I've witnessed or worked with people on, and this one was part of a cult called the Children of God that some people have heard of in Brazil. And the children are taught that you're a soldier of God, and as a soldier of God, your duty is to serve God by having sex with the adults in the cult, including the founder of the cult, which is just effing insane. And 6 years old, 7 years old. And her mother, her brother, her sister are all suicidal. She was suicidal. So some of the story is so horrific. So I feel all that, but I can't let it so overwhelm me that I can't be in a strong enough state to find the answer. So there's a delicate balance. I feel so much because I care so much, but I got to still stay in what I call uptime, where I'm focused on them, not my reaction to them. And then, but when I'm done, it's kind of like I said, I feel like, you know, I'm certain there's an answer. I will find the answer, and I do. And it's always beautiful because it's different every time, and it's like, that's the art of it. But when it's done, I always go backstage, and it's an overwhelming feeling of grace, of awe, of thankfulness that God, as corny as it may sound, the universe, whatever you want to call it, comes through me every time, for 39 years with millions of people from 100 countries plus. And I just feel overwhelmed with that feeling of gratitude, so much so that I usually cry, and very few people know it except my wife. And this little monster over here had an all-access pass, and I guess my team knew I was emotional, and they were giving me space to just be by myself and kind of process it for a few minutes. And I got like 5 minutes where I got back on stage. And he, to his credit.
You know, it's actually whatever dose of little bit of skepticism that one would naturally have, that because I was coming back a second time as a journalist, and for the most part, not even for the most part, I was totally with it, and everything about this filming it the second time was confirming everything that I was enchanted with the first time. And I was a little fearful, actually, that, you know, when you peek inside the sausage factory, you might not like what goes into the sausage. So coming back a second time, you know, it's not like I was wanting to be, from a filmmaking standpoint, you know, for it to be confirmed. From a filmmaking standpoint, I wanted the truth. Right. But from a personal standpoint, I didn't want to be disappointed. So I had this tension in me, you know. So whatever little bit of skepticism was in the back of my head, like, well, you know, is this really what it is, was completely dispelled by that moment, because that was one moment where his security guys and his staff, who are wonderful people and had, you know, really were terrific about letting me run everywhere. That was the one moment they said, you know, give him some space. And I said, I can't, I've got to go in that room. And I went in that room, and I found him as you see him in the film. And it just, you know, spoke of authenticity in the most profound way. And that's when I knew that I did not have to have that little voice in the back of my head wondering, because I have confirmed for myself that he's the real deal, and he's got this mission, and it's just imprinted on his DNA to just, you know, serve others.
Man, I'm so glad you did. It was such an amazing moment. I mean, it was incredible. Well, let's just wrap up with a tiny bit of advice from each of you. I'll start with Joe. You have won multiple Emmys, you've won multiple film festivals. Give some advice for that aspiring filmmaker out there, or someone who's just getting started in the industry.
Okay, good question again. You're good.
Done really good.
Thank you.
We're in the third day of a tour with 30 interviews.
I know, the very
so there aren't a lot of new questions, but you're doing an awesome job.
I mean, we've been on a lot of media.
It's made it more interesting for us.
This is fun. Getting new questions.
The first time I got tears talking about this.
I would just, I guess if I had to reduce it to one thing is, you know, you have to, in your gut, believe in what you're doing, because, you know, you just can't take no for an answer. This is a business, and creativity in general. It's the gatekeepers want to say no. The gatekeepers don't want, even though they, you know, they pretend they want people to get ahead. A lot of people don't want the younger creative souls to get ahead. It's just you have to believe in your gut that that you're on the right path.
So lastly, Tony, for people out there watching, I mean, I don't know that there's more of an epitome of success other than to have a documentary, you know, made all based on you. I mean, think about it. Like, you're in a small company.
I like what I do, but I think he's got other symbols of success besides the documentary. I mean, but thank you.
I mean, people who have had movies made about them and their work, you know, you're in a small club. So someone out there watching who thinks, I want to change the world like that. I want to make such a big difference. Not that people make a movie about me, but that I have that level of impact. How can we do it?
You got to start where you are, and you got to solve your own challenges before you try to solve them for someone else. You know, I created the coaching industry, and I say I created it. You know, there've always been therapists, but when I first started out, people calling me a guru, or they're calling me, you know, a motivator, which I can't stand that one at all, because it's never been about motivation for me. I don't need to motivate you. You're already motivated. If you're overweight, you're motivated to eat. If you don't do anything, you're motivated for comfort, right? I don't need to motivate. I need to find out what is your motive for action, and then see if I can augment it and help you to shift. But I think, you know, when I look at the life that I have today, and I see how it's unfolded, if I was trying to coach somebody else, I would say what I did was I solved my own problems. And as I started to solve those problems, and it still happens today, you know, I recently had, without a long story shortened, a series of physical challenges, torn rotator cuffs, snowboarding, things like that, that led to spinal stenosis, which is pain you can barely breathe. And then that led to me looking for answers, which eventually led to me finding out that I have massive mercury poisoning that's come from just eating fish. Swordfish and tuna have 1,000% more mercury than other foods. No one talks about it. And it could have killed me. But what's interesting is because I've solved that while I was in the middle of it, and I'm still in the middle, I'm detoxing my body. All along the way, I had problems in relationships, or problems in my body, or problems in my mind, or my emotions, or whatever. What's kept me going is I can solve this, and when I do, I'm gonna help others. Not let me go help others, and I haven't been congruent myself. And it's what I don't like about the coaching industry, because I'm living it. I'm making my life's work, and I can help anyone. So I think in the coaching industry, everything I did in the beginning was based on results. You don't pay me unless I get the result. And I called myself a coach, and no one had ever done that. You know, had to be a therapist to get paid even, right? And I remember I was on Larry King, and I just coached President Clinton for the first time at Camp David, and I was like 31. And Larry King, it was the first time Larry King interviewed me. We've become great friends over the decades. And he's like, what is this coach thing? He said, you're not a coach. You don't coach sports teams. I said, I actually do. And I named all the sports players I work. But I said, but that's not what a coach is in my mind. I'm not talking about sports coach. And I explained. But what it became was bastardized, because now you can go, and it's nice you can do it, and go learn some tools from somebody, anybody. They give you a little, you know, paper degree, and now you go hang out your shingle, but you haven't produced a damn result in your own life. So if you are looking for helping the world, it's about what it takes to transform, which is about everyone. That's the beauty of I'm Not Your Guru, and that's what it's about. So my invitation is work on improving. You know, Jim Rohn, my original teacher, used to say, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Work harder on yourself than you do on your business, because if I become more valuable, if I become more intelligent, if I become more compassionate, if I become more understanding, if I become more skilled, then I can help so many other people. But if I'm trying to help other people, most people are doing that to try to validate themselves. I'm not in this to validate myself. What I'm most interested in is who are you and how can I help? And I can only do that because I first ask, who am I and what do I need to do to go to the next level? And that process never ends for me. I mean, never. I'm always figuring out a way to grow, expand. I mean, Joe knows I do crazy stuff. I go for a week some scientist puts 180, electrodes on my brain, and I go in this dark room 14 hours a day with, freezing, and the electrodes are connected to audio sounds, and you have to figure out how to think a certain way so you get alpha waves, so you make music with your brain. And the first day I'm thinking, who do I got to kill to get out of this thing? How do I give up a week of my life? But I stay with it because I know that if I can improve this part of myself, there's more I'll be able to help. There's more I'll be able to give. There's someone else that it needs this, and I'm going to find them. So everyone has to find their passion. And if you're doing it to become somebody, wrong reason, you'll never get there. if you're doing it because you believe it's your mission, you believe it's what you're made for, if you'll do it when no one knows you're doing it, if you'll do it when you don't make any money. I mean, I've been near bankruptcy so many times in the first 20 years of my career because I don't know how to run a business in those days. All those skills are decades in the making. So have some patience and know you're going to overestimate what you can do in a year, as I said earlier, and you're going to underestimate what you can do in a decade. But if you'll get started now where it's your mission, it's your drive, and you work on you first, your gifts will make room for you.
Wow, incredible.
Man, there is so much we can learn from that interview, but here are my keys to success.
From my interview with Tony Robbins and Joe Berlinger. Number 1, fix yourself first. Tony Robbins is a big believer in working harder on yourself than you do on your work and your craft. He says that you cannot change the world and help people unless you first helped yourself. Number 2, forego the net. Both Berlinger and Robbins take a lot of risk in their work. Robbins explains this kind of risk is what makes people feel fully alive when they have to really explore their gifts and talents and find out who they are. And you have to truly believe what you're doing. Which brings me to number 3, focus on the mission. Berlinger says that as a creative, and Robbins said this applies to entrepreneurs as well, you're going to put your work out there and you're going to face rejection and criticism. And in order to bounce back, you have to truly believe in what you're doing. Berlinger says you simply can't take no for an answer, which, if you'll remember, that's how the documentary even happened, because he had to follow up with Tony over and over again. Believe in the work that you're doing. And lastly, foster gratitude and appreciation every single day. The successful people that I sit down with again and again have a daily practice of gratitude, appreciating the positive things around them. In order to focus on your mission and to continue to help people, you have to have an attitude of gratitude. You have to realize the good things that are around you rather than focusing on the many negative things that pop up throughout every single day. These 4 steps may be simple, but they're not easy. However, they are the key to fulfillment and world-changing work.
I'm Kelsey Humphreys here with Tony Robbins, Joe Berlinger, and this has been The Pursuit.